It was total destruction. It was just total destruction.
In May of 1896, the second deadliest tornado in Michigan's history swept through Oakland County.
The tornado, which was an F5, which was the largest one in the state of Michigan until the 1950s in Flint,
devastating the village of Oakwood and reducing the town of Thomas to just a church and some houses. To help explain the story of that fateful day, I spoke to local historian and Oxford tour guide Drew Holt.
The tornadoes at the time, they didn't really understand what they were or how they happened, that kind of thing, but it was kind of a phenomenon kind of thing. But there was no precautions. There were no telephones. The tornado came in on May 25th, 1896, about 7 o'clock in the evening. So people were finishing up doing chores as it was starting to get dark. And as it got dark, they heard this loud noise, sounding like a train, a whistle. People in Oxford were looking north and saw the black clouds kind of moving.
At the same time, just a few miles west in the village of Ortonville, Arnold Seelbinder's great-grandfather, John, was watching the storm too.
Him and his father, John Seelbinder, were in the backyard on the pad, and they were looking up inside the tornado. And they were watching it and following it in amazement, and it started drifting and went down. And John Seelbinder, my great-grandfather, looked at Edwin and said, "That hit Oakwood." So he immediately grabbed the horse and carriage and headed out because he knew that there would be trouble.
The help that came by horseback, and by that point, the devastation had already had happened.
Every building in the village of Oakwood was destroyed. The nearby town of Thomas was also left in ruins.
It caused a lot of devastation. It killed 50 people in the area and injured up to 100 more people.
Nearly a month later, the official report of the damages caused by the tornado would be released. Over $162,000 in damages, equivalent to over $5.8 million today. That's not even accounting for the damages done to crops. A majority of the victims were farmers, left destitute and indebted after losing their entire livelihoods. Some, like Henry Quick, lost their entire family. Cleanup efforts were slow, and afterwards massive debts would cripple many local families for years. The first to come to aid were concerned neighbors from the nearby towns of Oxford and Ortonville, combing through the wreckage in search of victims and burying the dead.
Oxford were the first people to come, and eventually the Pontiac Gazette and the Detroit News.
When they got to Oakwood, it was cameras and workmen and guys burying bodies. John had went to Thomas to bury bodies.
Rumors would begin to circulate that the towns of Thomas and Oakwood were cursed following the tragedy. Despite these rumors, Thomas would see an effort to rebuild, while the village of Oakwood would not be as lucky.
They did not rebuild Oakwood, and the reason being is that the greatest technology at the time was the train, long before the automobile here. And so if you were on the train, that you could bring all the supplies you need in. So it would be easier to come into Thomas and bring all the wood and lumber and things you need to rebuild homes. So they rebuilt Thomas, but they never rebuilt Oakwood, and that's why it's just kind of a corner there today with just a party store. But yeah, they definitely rebuilt Thomas, but most people don't know. When you drive north on M24 past Oxford, you get to Thomas Road and people don't know what that is.
But at the time, in the 1890s, Thomas was a larger city than even Oxford. Well, Oakwood never recovered and Thomas was taken off the map.
In Ortonville, I'm Griffin Machrowicz, OTV.